in your marriage?
Yes.
And what has he told you about those things?
He tells me that he always has compared me negatively against his exes and affair partners. So whether
In
it's
what way?
whether it's my body shape after having children, I've been told that I'm fat. I've been told, comments about being older than him, cutting me down from head to toe. All of his affair partners were much younger than me and had not had children. And so, being told that I'm fat, being told that I don't kiss him like such and such person does, or things like um, she's much more passionate than you are, or she gives me the attention that you don't, things along that line.
So literally comparing you to his affair partners.
Correct.
Is that the kind of person you think should have majority of possession of your young, impressionable children?
No.
So let's talk about that. Let's get around to the meat and potatoes of this. From before the day they were born, who was the primary caregiver of these children?
I was.
And when I said since before the day were they born, do you know what I mean by that?
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means that I became a stay-at-home parent just after I became pregnant with Aniston.
Was that something that your husband agreed to?
Yes, and encouraged.
But he was yelling at you for not working in the audio. What caused that? What's the difference there?
That's part of his abuse.
So it's okay for you to stay home, but I get to yell at you about it because you don't make any money.
Correct.
And while we're talking about your job for a minute, just so we'll know up front, this is a job that's an online job.
It is.
So arguably, I don't want to hide the ball from the judge. If he were to order that you return the children back to Houston and live here with them, you could still do that same job from here, couldn't you?
I could.
It wouldn't be your preference, but you would do it for your children.
Yes.
Tell us how you have always been the primary caregiver to these kids.
What do you mean as far as how? What my role was?
Tell me from the crack of light to the end of day and all through the night.
I'm with them 24/7. From the minute they wake up, I greet them. I get them ready for the day. I dress them. I feed them. I pack school lunches. I drive them to school. Bryson is not in school yet, and so he's home with me, and so my job is very flexible and wants us to take hourly breaks, and so it allows me to spend time with him. He actually can come in and be right here with some of my meetings. They encourage a healthy family work-life balance, and so it's amazing. I pick Aniston up from school. We attend her extracurricular activities. We go with Slayton and watch him play his sports endeavors. We cook dinner or grab a bite to eat if it's a really busy night. Once we get home, we do homework, we read, we let her write, the kids play, and we have a bath after dinner and homework, and that's when they call their dad. And then as we climb into bed, the first thing we do is pray, and we give thanks, and then I usually tuck them in and snuggle with them in bed.
You heard the testimony by your husband in my cross-examination where he said that he was just getting him out of the truck, I think, and somehow his elbow just popped out of its socket, and then it's happened a bunch after that. Is that really what happened?
No.
What really happened?
We were trying to get ready for a football game that my daughter was cheering at, and we were rushing around trying to get ready, and I asked Bo if he would get Bryson dressed. And so this was a Friday early evening. And he was mad that I was asking him to help get Bryson dressed. Bryson at 9 months was not cooperating, not participating, not wanting to get dressed. And Bo got angry and he yanked him up by his arm to try to get his pants on him. And he heard a pop. We went to the game, and there is a picture of Bryson smiling at the game, but he could put no weight on that arm and he could not crawl for 3 days. So he went from Friday night until Monday morning when I took him to the doctor against Bo's wishes. And Bo said that we went on Saturday. We went on Monday morning while he was at work. And the doctor did an x-ray, diagnosed him with nurse's made elbow. She reduced it in the office. And she said, let's just see how he does. He got down on the ground. He was able to put pressure on his arm and he was able to crawl.
Okay. Now we've heard about Alexis and Slayton quite a bit. If you're able to live in Amarillo, your children don't have to be separated from their older brother, correct?
That is correct.
If you have to move back to Fulshire, then the children won't be around their older brother, right?
That is correct.
And it's going to be very hard for you to see your son, correct?
That is correct.
And I assume that if you did have to move back to Fulshire, when dad has his weekends, that's when what would you probably do on those weekends?
I would definitely go see my son.
All right. I used a phrase that your husband didn't seem to recognize yesterday, self-sacrifice. Do you know what self-sacrifice means?
100%.
Okay. And do you feel that you are the person who better would put your children ahead of your personal needs and what your personal wants are?
Yes.
I'm not trying to set it up to make it easy on the judge to order you to move back, but I'm just trying to help illustrate that you would do whatever you need to do to be there for your kids. Is that right?
Yes.
But you're still asking that he allows you to live in Amarillo.
Yes.
Let's talk about why you want to live in Amarillo.
Okay.
Do you have any family members or any close friends anywhere close to Fulshire, Texas?
I have a cousin who spends half of her time in Houston and half of her time in Elbert, Texas, where her parents are.
A really close cousin that you spend a lot of time with?
No.
Okay. Does your husband have any close relatives or friends that live here? Any kind of support? So neither of you have any support system here?
No.
And we heard earlier that although your husband wants his kids to end up going to high school here, and it's very stable here, he works in the oil and gas business. And even back in June, he was afraid he was going to get laid off, right?
Yes.
Are you concerned about that type of stability?
It's concerning.
More moves for the kids?
Yes.
If you're allowed to stay in Amarillo, do you think that you pretty much could stay in Amarillo until the kids do graduate from high school?
Yes.
And do you have a support system in Amarillo?
Yes.
Who is your support system there?
I have a lot of extended family. My parents live here. My brother and his wife and their kids live here. My brother lives about an hour. My other brother lives about an hour and 20 minutes from Amarillo. My grandma lives here. I have numerous aunts and uncles that live here.
The school that your daughter is going to, your mother teaches at?
Yes.
And how's your daughter doing in school?
She is thriving.
Okay. Does she exhibit any signs of alienation when she's with you?
No.
Do you believe either parent is really trying to alienate these children from the other?
No.
Do you think your husband inadvertently says things and does things to the kids that could lead to that, but it's not on purpose?
Yes.
Besides your mother and father, who else do you have there that is close with your family?
Besides family members or just my parents?
No, I mean, let's talk about, do you have any close friends there that could be there for you if you had to be in the hospital or, you needed a break or whatever?
Oh, yes. I have numerous friends that would be there for me. I'm good friends with our old neighbor that we lived, where we lived in Bushland. I've developed some new friendships since I've been up here. And so, yes, 100%.
And do your children have friends there that they developed during the over 1 year period that they lived in Amarillo, Bushland before y'all moved to Houston?
Yes.
Um, and have your children have they rekindled well, they weren't gone that long, right? So they didn't have a chance to really need to rekindle those relationships.
Correct.
I mean, your daughter only went to school. How long did your daughter physically go to school here in Fulshire?
From January 7th until spring break.
Which was in mid-March.
March. Mm-hmm.
And your husband was talking about how well established she was in school here, but it was only, what, 3 months?
Not even.
Do the children have any significant concerning health issues?
Aniston suffers from asthma that is controlled with an inhaler, and Bryston suffers from eczema, which is controlled with prescription creams.
And you heard my questioning of your husband yesterday about who's the one that takes care of all that with the prescriptions and everything.
Yes.
Who was that? Who's that?
Me.
I didn't get quite I couldn't quite figure out what his answer was about attending doctor's appointments, but let's talk about you making any type of doctor appointment for the children, whether emergency or otherwise. Who by far and away has been that person during the children's entire lives?
That has been me.
Can you count on one hand the number of times your husband has attended a medical appointment for your children?
I can't even count on 5 fingers.
It's less than 5.
Yes.
And then when I asked him about his involvement with school, he said I think he said he went to the first day of school each year, right?
Yes.
But I guess, are we talking about, what is that, kindergarten and first grade?
Only kindergarten.
Okay, so he attended the first day of kindergarten. I'm sorry, I thought Aniston was in first grade.
She is now. Yes.
Okay, so he attended the first day of first grade too?
No.
He didn't?
No.
So only attended the first day of kindergarten?
Correct.
To your knowledge, did he ever go up to the school to eat lunch with the kids or with Aniston?
He did one time, I believe.
And how many PTO meetings did he go to?
We didn't have it.
Calls for speculation.
Overall, any that you're aware of?
We did not have one in Bushland, so there was none to attend. We did not have one in Fulshire because the school year was cut short and we went virtual, and so we spoke to the teacher through Zoom.
Okay, so and he attended that with you?
No.
Okay. Did you let him know there was going to be one?
There wasn't any labeled parent-teacher conferences.
Could your husband have called the school and had a video chat with the teacher?
Yes.
Is there anything that you've done at the school to keep him from being involved in what's going on at school with Aniston?
No.
So he can call them and get any information he wants about your child?
Yes.
To your knowledge, has he done that at all while she's been in school up there?
I believe that he has reached out to her teacher once or twice.
Okay, fair enough. Does Alexis come home very often to Amarillo?
Yes.
And how does she get along with her little siblings?
She adores them.
You said that she has a job already?
She does.
And she's about to get married.
She is.
And I assume since Bo was involved in raising her for 9 years, I assume you're going to encourage your daughter to invite him to the wedding, right?
Yes.
Because he said he hadn't heard anything, but it's not until June, right?
Correct.
Do you think that's an alienating behavior to encourage your daughter to invite her or maybe by then ex-stepdad to her wedding?
No.
I'm sorry, Judge. I'm just scrolling through to see what I can cut out and move on.
I understand.
Judge, while Mr. Haston does that, is it possible to take a very, very quick 5-minute break?
Well, I was about to ask him, how much longer do you think you have with this witness? You may not know yet, but do you have an estimate, Mr. Haston?
I'll be wrapped up, whether I want to or not, Judge. I'll be wrapped up by 3. I'll make you that promise.
Okay. I was planning on trying to get through the direct and then take our afternoon break, but we'll go ahead and we'll just do a 5-minute break so everybody can hit the restroom or whatever they need to do. And then we'll come back and we'll take another about 10-minute break later in the afternoon, but we're going to be in recess for 5 minutes. Court's off the
Thank
record.
you. Okay.
clock on the left, is it in 5 minutes? You know?
Yeah, maybe 5. Yeah, it should be about 5.
All right, I didn't check the time when I left, but everybody's back, so I guess I'm okay. We're back on the record. We're going to pick up with the direct of Ms. Nelson by Mr. Haston. You may proceed, Mr. Haston.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Nelson, one of the things that's been discussed is the amount of time that your husband's been away from the home in the past. And, you know, arguably 2020 was an odd year, so not as much travel. But in the past, I had asked him about 2019, and of his own testimony, he was gone 81 days in 2019. And I'm going to show you. Thought I had it. Yeah, I can't find it. In our evidence, we spreadsheeted that, and then we also created a chart. And 81 days is approximately 22% of the entire year, isn't it?
Yes.
Was that an aberration of his travel in the past, or was that pretty much how much he traveled in a given year?
It's pretty accurate.
And did that also include, you know, his fishing and hunting trips?
Yes.
We heard about him hunting and fishing when he said, well, if you're not going to get a job, then I'll do me. And then he said he'd go hunting and fishing more. Tell us about his hunting and fishing trips and how frequent they are.
Whenever we lived in Oklahoma, he was a part of a fishing club with his dad. And so probably 9 months out of the year, he was in this club fishing tournaments monthly and then pre-fishing the week before the tournament. So he was fishing a lot during that time. He continues to fish as often as he can, or the boat allows him to when it's working and whatnot. Fishing is a huge part of his life. He says it's his way of de-stressing and getting away from everything. And so it's something that he loves to do, and he does it often.
Do you get to have any hobbies and run off for the weekend?
No.
What is pretty much your entire job besides your job?
My job is to be a mom.
And how do you like that job?
I wouldn't trade it for the world.
All right. I'm going to show you, I'm trying to get something to disappear from the screen real quick, and I want to show you something. I can't get it. Judge, if I may, I'm going to share my screen briefly. I'm going to show you Respondents Exhibit 15 and ask you if this is the pie chart that we made from that spreadsheet.
Yes.
And so this pie chart shows that if you include his personal time plus his out-of-town work time, close to 25% of the time, right?
Yes.
And that didn't just happen in 2019, your testimony is?
That is correct.
How many weekends, how much time are you gone from your kids during the year?
Rarely.
We've heard about absences, and I don't remember if we talked too deeply about that, but one of the things that I like to ask people about in a custody case is, I think is important, is the flexibility that parents show to work with the other parents. Do you agree with me that that's an important parenting tool?
Yes.
Or trait? Has Bo, do you think Bo has been a flexible co-parent during this process?
No.
How has he not been flexible?
Well, first and foremost, with Aniston's schooling on those Fridays.
When we made this agreement for you to drive all the way down on Fridays, at that time, did you know that it would impact her being able to attend school?
Not to the extent that it has.
I mean, at that point, we thought we were going to have a hearing in about 3 weeks, right?
Correct.
Or I'm sorry, we were going to mediation to settle the case.
Correct.
So you thought you were making a short-term agreement and maybe she could miss a couple of school days?
Correct.
But then when this thing got strung out and strung out and strung out, were you concerned?
Very.
Why were you concerned?
Because you have to be in school for a certain amount of time before you start getting the letters from the school, with the threats of truancy court, with the threats of summer school, with the threats of not being able to progress to the next grade.
And have you discussed that with Bo, didn't you?
I did.
There are text messages and our evidence about that, aren't there?
Yes.
I think there are, but maybe not. So what was it that you requested from Bo?
I asked if we could leave 1 hour later so that she could be counted present on those Fridays.
So essentially, so she could stay in school till 10 o'clock. Was that it?
Correct.
And he even testified that no, he wasn't about to bend on that.
Correct.
Right? And you've sent him the copy of the truancy letter, haven't you?
I'm not sure if I have or not.
Okay. And you've told him that you were concerned about her being absent from school.
Very.
And you've done it more than once.
Yes.
But no flexibility.
No.
Further, did you offer him some options or try to explain to him how it might be good for him to do that?
I did.
What were your suggestions?
I suggested that either we leave an hour later and I drive the entire way, or he meet us 1 hour up the road so that he could still have his possession starting at 6 o'clock.
But he testified yesterday that the judge said that the party who moves away with the kids has to do all the driving, and he wasn't going to bend on that either, was he?
No.
Even at the expense of being able to spend more time with his kids?
Correct.
I'm not trying to sound whiny for you, but your children do spend a lot of time in the car. But during this whole process, you've been driving. I want to make sure I have this right. You've been driving all the way from Amarillo to Houston to Fulshire, and then turning around and going back. Is that right? Most of the time.
Some of the time, yes.
Okay. And then on Sunday, you drive halfway to Burleson and you pick them up there and then drive back.
Correct, except for Burleson's still further for me.
Okay. And so you're putting a lot of miles on yourself, even more than your poor kids are having to go through, true?
Correct.
But you're doing it to make sure you comply with the court's order.
Correct.
And you're doing it willingly.
Correct.
But recently, since you got your job, you were able to make an agreement. Were you able to make an agreement with Mr. Nelson that you stay here in town while you're home or after you drop them off? Or was this just something you did on your own?
This was something that I did on my own with communication with my work.
So tell us what you do now.
I got the approval from my work to be able to work from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then get in the car and drive my children for 9 hours, where I drop them off at Fulshire with their dad. And then I immediately go to my hotel and check in. And then I work another 4 hours plus to complete my job for the day.
All right. And then do you just go ahead and stay in the hotel for the weekend and then drive back on Sunday?
I do, yes.
Has it been kind of weird? I mean, did Mr. Nelson know you were staying in town?
I believe so.
I mean, he sees the credit card receipts. He can see the hotels, right?
Correct.
And was it just this past Sunday that he asked you to not meet him in Burleson?
Yes.
What was his request?
He requested that I stop where I was and meet him because it was psychologically damaging to take the kids all the way to Burleson.
So he didn't want it. He didn't want that extra time with them in the car. I mean, it is kind of weird that you were both driving to Burleson about the same time, right?
Correct.
And so he didn't really mind giving up that time in the car if he didn't have to drive since you were already there, right?
Correct.
And you actually agreed to that, didn't you?
I did.
But what happened?
Once I agreed to it, he took it off the table.
And did y'all end up meeting in Burleson, or did he drive all the way back to Amarillo?
We met in Burleson.
Did he threaten you that he was going to drive all the way to Amarillo?
No, what he said is that he would see me at 6, and I said, no, we meet at 4:30.
Oh, okay. I understand. So even then, you were trying to be flexible with him.
Yes.
Can you tell us some other ways he's been inflexible?
As far as,
Actually, let me move on. Let's talk about the kids and their health. Has he ever made a doctor's appointment?
no, he has not.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
What was your answer? What was your answer, Teresa?
My answer?
Uh-huh.
No, he has not.
I heard talk about Slayton being very aggressive and angry yesterday. About when was that?
When we were approaching a move.
Was that the move? Was that the move to Houston?
That was the move from Stillwater to Bushland.
And after that, when y'all moved here, how did that affect your son?
He was very depressed. He stayed in his room nonstop to avoid conflict and emotional and verbal abuse from Bo. He cried himself to sleep every night as a 15-year-old. And he just wanted to be back in Bushland, where he was promised to get to graduate from.
Did you hear your husband's testimony yesterday that he hasn't even tried to apply to get transferred or even ask about getting transferred back to Amarillo?
Yes.
Do you think it would be in your children's best interest to be allowed to have their primary residence in Amarillo?
Yes.
Do you think that if the court ordered that, then your husband may actually begin the process of doing what he's done in the past
Yes.
and ask for a transfer?
Yes.
If you were allowed to live in Amarillo, the children would get to continue the healthy family bonding between their siblings and all their friends and their families that they've grown up with essentially over the 8 years, correct?
Correct.
And Amarillo's been really the only hub for all y'all's travels, hasn't it?
Correct.
You mentioned a ton of stuff from dawn to dusk about how you handle the kids. In any of that, what does Bo do?
When he gets from work, he'll usually wrestle with the kids, play with them for a very short time. And then he goes back to, kind of doing the things that he wants to do.
Such as?
Drink, watch TV, be on his phone, work out, go have drinks with a coworker or a contractor, go have dinner with a coworker or a contractor, go fish.
And did he, when y'all were living together, so he would come home from work and then he would leave and go to the gym?
No, he didn't go to the gym. He would go run or do a workout or go ride his bike, that sort of stuff.
Just, he would, like he said, he would just be doing me, taking care of him.
Correct.
And we saw that really cute picture of him cooking the kids some scrambled eggs and a waffle. Have you ever seen him make the kids scrambled eggs and waffles?
He often does it on the weekends.
Okay. But the day in and day out, who's that?
It's me.
I mean, by the time the kids get up, he's gone, right? He's already gone to work.
Yes.
You don't have your youngest one in daycare or mommy day out?
No.
So you're there 24/7 on the job.
Yes.
A couple more things. Is there anything to keep Bo from coming up there and exercising his weekend in Amarillo?
No.
Would you welcome it? And I mean, under an over 100-mile standard possession order, you and I have discussed that he can pick a weekend in any given month. So like he could like pick a weekend that has a Monday holiday, right? And have a longer period of time.
Correct.
But if he really wants to see the kids more, would you be agreeable to him having actually a standard possession order, and just ask that maybe he take one of the weekends up there so he can be around the kids and their environment, their friends, and let them experience, so they're not always having to come down here and be away from the world they've got going up there.
That would be awesome.
Again, some
Yes.
self-sacrifice, right?
Correct.
Has he offered to do that?
No,
And he's only come up there once, hasn't he?
that is correct.
And that was for that 2 hours for Aniston's birthday.
Correct.
He says that you didn't let him have the kids overnight. Is that true?
He didn't. No,
Well, what happened?
he didn't ask.
Well, he says he did.
He didn't ask me.
Who asked you?
Aniston did.
And what did you tell Aniston?
I told Aniston that we would see. And then whenever Bo arrived and she was asking about swimming, he said, the pool's broken, honey.
Okay. And so he didn't even ask you.
No,
Very best case for him, he used as a child as a go-between to communicate with you.
correct.
If he had asked, would you have let him?
I would have considered it, yes.
Well, he came all that way. You would have let him, wouldn't you?
Yes.
I'll pass witness, Judge. Oh, 3:00.
Okay, Mr. Adams?
Just shy of 3.
Do we want to take our break, Your Honor, before I get started, or?
I would say let's get 30 minutes in, 30 to 45 minutes in, and then we'll take like a 10-minute break.
Excellent, Your Honor. Give me just 1 second. Mrs. Nelson, hi.
Hello.
Earlier, we heard you testify regarding your move to Fulshire from Amarillo. And you wrote a text message to your husband where you said that you thought that he was a man of God and that it was his decision whether or not your family should move to Fulshire. Is that correct?
No,
What's incorrect about that?
I don't know if I referred to him as a man of God.
Okay. Did you refer to him as a godly man?
I would have to go back and read that specifically. I'm not sure.
Okay. Give me just 1 second.
Teresa, you're allowed to look at your exhibits too.
Okay. Do you know what number it is by chance?
I believe it is P12.
P21, I think.
Yes, P21. Oh, wait, no, that's not it.
It's P12.
Yeah, sorry about that. Wait, no, not P12.
Mrs. Nelson, what is this?
That is, I believe, the church message for that day.
These are text messages that were sent between you and your husband, correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry. You said, and I'm looking, just reading from the page we're looking at here. I've seen you become less self-centered. I've seen you become less abusive and more loving. I've seen you make decisions with your family in mind and more than yourself, promotions, money, and admiration. I watched you pay for my oldest daughter's college, even when you probably didn't want to. I watched you sustain our finances. I've watched you go to work each day, each and every day with your family in mind.
Judge objection. I mean, the document speaks for itself. If there's a question, I'd ask a question.
Same.
Mrs. Nelson, did you mean these things when you sent them to your husband?
Yes.
So these are true statements.
Yes, but it needs further explanation.
So you testified that you told your husband it was his decision to make about moving to Fulshire, correct?
Correct.
And that the next day you then changed your mind and told him you had changed your mind. Is that right?
No.
What did you tell him the next day?
It was him the next day that told me when he woke me up that he was not going to move to Fulshire or to the greater Houston area, that he was going to stay in Bushland.
Okay. And then the next thing that you testified to is that then he told you, no, we're moving to Houston anyway. Is that right?
At lunch that day, yes.
So at the time that he made the decision to move to Houston, the last thing you had told him was that you were okay with moving to Houston.
I told him that I would trust his decision.
After he made that decision, what did you think about it?
Which decision? The one from first thing in the morning or the one from lunch?
When you found out that he was going to move you guys to Fulshire,
I was devastated.
you're devastated. You didn't think that move was in your children's best interest?
I did not.
Mrs. Nelson, why would you agree to do something that you didn't think was in your children's best interest?
I explained in my testimony earlier that I had a lot of fear surrounding if I chose not to go with him. He had threatened that he would spend $1 million fighting me to take my kids away. He threatened me that he would cut me off from everything, that I would live in a shack if I was not married to him.
So you agreed to move even though you knew it wasn't in your children's best interest because you wanted to avoid divorce litigation. Is that right?
I wanted to avoid the hell that I knew that he was going to put me through and has.
What does that mean, ma'am? Well, I mean, what do you mean by hell? You mean the divorce litigation? You mean the abuse you'd already testified to previously?
All of the above.
After you guys moved to Fulshire, you did quite a few things that would made it seem like you wanted to stay there, right?
What things are those?
Well, I mean, like you guys decided to put a pool in, correct?
Yes.
Was that something that you approved?
I have many text messages saying that we should probably wait, given the circumstances.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Sustained.
Mrs. Nelson, did you approve the pool or not?
No, Bo had the ultimate decision on putting the pool in.
Did you give Bo feedback about the pool
When he asked.
when he asked? You did help him select the materials for outdoor kitchen stuff, correct?
Yes.
You mentioned just now The reason why you didn't want to act in your children's best interest was because you were afraid of the hell that Bo was going to put you through, correct?
Yes,
You ended up filing for divorce first, though, right?
I did.
What changed?
Whenever Bo was gone for those 6 weeks, I had time to heal from my surgery and all of my complications. I had my babies there, all 4 of them. I had a lot of time to spend in prayer. I had a lot of time to gain clarity. He threatened me in May, on May 17th, with leaving me for somebody better if I didn't meet all of his needs and get well immediately. And I just was seeing that the picture was on the wall, that he had no intentions of changing.
So when you told us earlier that you didn't act in your children's best interest because you were afraid of him, that was a lie, right? The answer actually was that you weren't sure if he was going to change yet.
No, sir.
Well, isn't that what you just testified to? That the difference, the reason why you filed for divorce was because you had healed, you had changed, and you had decided he wasn't going to change. Correct?
At that moment, yes.
At that moment, yes. So you
Objection, sidebar, Judge. Repeating the witness's statement.
Sustain.
Ms. Nelson, you testified quite a bit that you're okay with a joint managing conservatorship, correct?
Yes.
But you pled for sole managing conservatorship, right?
Yes.
I guess, although I understand strategically the difference, why is it that you pled for that, but now it seems like you're arguing in court that you're fine with something different?
Because I want to do what is in the best interest of my kids ultimately.
And so you think a joint managing conservatorship is in the best interest of your children?
Yes.
Because that gives their father, Bo, more ability to be in their life, correct?
Correct.
You said within that conservatorship, though, that you want to be able to make the decisions. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you mean that you want to make the decisions after consultation with your husband?
I would be willing to make a consultation with my husband. Yes.
Okay. And the reason why you want the court to do that is because it's your position that have always been forthright with your husband about sharing information with him. Is that correct?
To the best of my ability, yes.
You testified earlier that one of the children, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which one, that they had 5 therapy sessions, but that you didn't tell your husband about it. Can you remind me which child we're talking about?
They both went.
Oh, they both did.
Yes.
And you didn't tell your husband about either of them attending therapy. Is that correct?
At that time, I did not.
Right. So you don't always keep them in the loop about what's going on with the kids, right?
I said to the best of my ability.
You also enrolled them in school in Amarillo, and you didn't tell your husband when you did that, correct?
Correct.
Why is that?
Because I had filed for divorce, it was time to enroll the children. And so I chose to enroll them here.
Sorry, ma'am, I don't think you answered my question. Why didn't you tell your husband that you enrolled them there?
Because at the time we were not communicating.
So there are times when you and your husband don't communicate, and it really wouldn't be feasible, the relationship that you're proposing, where you make joint decisions. Is that correct?
No.
Earlier, you testified that the reason why you went back to Fulshire in July and then ultimately went on a Florida vacation was because you were trying to figure out how to proceed, which is why you stayed until the 28th of July. Is that correct?
Partially, yes.
Okay. And when you say you were trying to figure out how to proceed with what?
With my next steps. Bo had encouraged me to seek counsel with an attorney because he was doing the same.
When did he encourage you to seek a lawyer?
I don't know the exact date, but it was during that time.
Between July 19th and July 28th.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So let me make sure I understand then. You're saying that you stayed in Fulshire because Bo recommended that you talk to an attorney. Is that right?
Partially, yes.
Did you talk to an attorney?
I did a free 20-minute consultation.
Okay. And so what, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is you said that you were there because you're trying to figure out how to proceed. What were you trying to figure out how to proceed about? You're answering that it was the divorce, correct?
I said my next steps.
In the divorce, is that correct?
No. Next steps moving forward from that time period.
You mean with just your life in general?
With regards to our family as a whole.
So I'm trying to figure out, Mrs. Nelson, and there's an exhibit in evidence, right? A handwritten note that you wrote on July 28th. I'm just trying to figure out at that point, right? Were you and your husband divorcing? Were you separated? Or were you back home in Fulshire working on your marriage?
I came back home to Fulshire because he ran with my children, sir.
Okay, but he didn't run with your children to Florida. You went on a Florida trip with him just a few days later, correct?
Yes, he coerced me into going.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
And other than yes.
You also asked for an injunction for drinking. You don't really think that Bo has a drinking problem that you need to be worried about with your children, do you?
Yes, I do.
You do. There's a lot better ways, if that's really what you're concerned about, to prevent him from drinking, right? Other than just an injunction.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay. You said that Bo would have 3 to 4 drinks per night. And that when Mr. Haston asked you how many times you'd seen him drunk, you responded that you had seen him drunk and puking 10 times between 2011 and 2020. Is that right?
Yes.
So you think that a man who's been drunk 10 times in almost a decade needs an alcohol injunction?
I think that it's important that he be sober whenever he has his children.
He testified that when he starts drinking, he's actually giggly and fun at first, right?
Yes.
And so you just testified that the majority of the time he doesn't drink to get drunk because that's only happened 10 times, right?
Correct.
So a giggly drunk, let me rephrase, a giggly drinker is probably not the worst thing in the world for children, right?
It depends on how you see it.
There was an incident that we've talked about quite a bit about Bo placing his hand on Aniston's face. You testified earlier that Aniston was suffering from serious side effects from some medication she was taking. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the name of that medicine, did you say? I don't remember.
I don't have that in front of me. I'd have to look.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions about that. So when you brought that up, I was thinking about how you said that you're always the one who handles the kids' medical issues.
Correct.
When you talked to their doctor about this medication before they were placed on it, what was that conversation like?
It was the doctor in Stillwater, and she highly encouraged the medication and did not list any severe side effects to it.
Okay. How long was Aniston on that medication?
In my best recollection, I would say maybe about 4 or 5 months. I'm not 100% sure.
4 or 5 months. When do you remember her first having, when do you remember there being an issue? How long after she started the medication?
When she started the medication, she was having great success. A lot of her asthma symptoms had subsided. So we were ecstatic about that. Within probably the first month or two, we started noticing some small symptoms, but not enough to think that it was the medication causing it. So by, I would say, probably the third or fourth month, she was showing some pretty severe symptoms. She was waking up with horrible nightmares at night. She was lashing out whenever she's been kind and loving her whole life. She just was having a lot of issues with it.
So it took you quite a few months, even though your daughter was on a medication that had very serious negative side effects for her, before you realized there was an issue and were able to do something about it, correct?
Correct.
After that incident where Bo put his hand on her, when did you speak with her doctor about the medication?
Very quickly after that.
What do you mean by very quickly?
I can't tell you. I would say within a week or two, likely. As soon as we put 2 and 2 together, I immediately reached out to the doctor.
But you're not sure exactly when you put 2 and 2 together, right?
Very quickly after that.
He testified about that incident that when Bo placed his hand on Aniston, that you reacted by telling him that to please not spank her in public. Is that correct?
I said not to punish her in public, yes.
Right. So the issue that you identified in your testimony was that you didn't want him to do that in public, correct?
Well, I would prefer him never to hit her in the face.
You would prefer it, but you allowed it to happen when y'all were in private, right?
I don't think I allowed it to happen. I mean, he told me that he was going to punish how he saw fit.
And whether that was in your children's best interest or not, that's what you allowed him to do, right?
I don't think I allowed him to do it.
Well, ma'am, y'all been married a long time. You just filed for divorce in August of 2020. I mean, you've been letting him do a lot of stuff according to you, right?
I think that he is a grown man that is in control of his actions. And if he chooses that, I don't know how. I mean, I can step in after the fact, which is what I do. And he knows where I stand with thumping and hitting and backhanding in places other than the bottom.
You say that he knows where you stand, right? Because that wasn't the only time that that's ever happened, right?
Correct.
So you've seen him repeatedly put his hands on your children. You didn't think it was in their best interest, but you didn't stop it, correct?
Like I said, every time he did it, I spoke with him about it.
You spoke with him about it. Earlier, you guys talked about control, financial control. You mentioned something that just confused me. You said that let me ask you this question. Do you receive child support?
I do.
Who do you receive child support from?
Shad Jurgensen.
Okay. And when did you start receiving child support from Shad?
Whenever we divorced.
When was that?
That was in 2006.
2006. So in 2006, you start receiving child support from Shad. Where does that money go?
It goes into a bank account.
Was that your bank account?
Yes.
Okay. And then you and Bo marry in 2011, correct?
Correct.
At what point do you start giving Bo your child support from Shad?
Bo gained access to the bank account, and he has done all of the moving of the child support once it comes in.
So you still have access to the account that the child support goes into. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you allow Bo to move that money out of that account, correct?
No, I didn't allow it. That's what he said he was doing.
You gave him access to that account, correct?
Yes, he asked to be added jointly.
And you did say earlier that he's helped pay for your kids' college education. Is that correct?
Yes,
You mentioned that if you violated the budget, his budget, you would get a reprimand.
yes.
Can you give us what a reprimand like what?
I think I testified that he would belittle me. He would cut me down. He would call me stupid, idiot, for not following his budget.
Sure. But I didn't hear you say anything about he's never struck you for budget violation.
There's been significant abuse.
Has he ever hit you over a budget violation?
I cannot attest to that currently.
You're not sure if he's hit you?
There's been so many times that there has been physical violence. I cannot remember it, how many times it was related to budget.
Okay. So just so we're clear then, you're telling me that this man has been so physically violent that you're not sure exactly all the times that it happened. You're telling me that he's also struck your children more than once, that you didn't think it was in their best interest. But
Objection, compound question.
Same.
you also testified earlier that you have access to a Chase Visa card. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you're not sure what the limit on it is, but you think it's at least 30,000. Is that right?
correct.
Have you ever tried to charge something on there since the divorce has been filed and you've been unable to do that?
Yes.
When was that?
I think it was the 1st of September
1st of September. And how long were you unable to use the card?
until I called and asked why I was not allowed to do so, and they re-granted me access because we share the account jointly.
Objection, Your Honor. Non-responsive.
Sustained.
Mrs. Nelson, I just want to know when. How long was it after you weren't able to use the card until you could use it again?
The next day.
The next day. Okay. And that was the only time during the divorce that you couldn't use the card?
I believe so.
Okay. Every time that Craig has sent or his office has sent you a bill, have you been able to pay it?
Yes,
So for the foreseeable future, there's no reason why you would need interim attorney's fees in order to continue to pay your attorney. Is that correct?
Judge, if they're going to stipulate to that, I would stipulate to it as well.
Maybe we need to talk. I don't understand the stipulation, Craig. Do we need to get off the record or?
Well, it was sounding like you were saying that she's going to continue to get to use the credit card to pay her attorney's fees. And if that's the agreement, then I'm happy to do it that way.
Well, I guess that's something we can talk about. Can I continue with the examination?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're clear, Mrs. Nelson. You've been able to pay your attorney throughout this litigation, right?
yes.
Your Honor, just for my management, can you give me an idea about where you were thinking about stopping?
Today?
Or, well, just for our, weren't we taking one more break or?
Yeah, I was gonna do between 3:30 and 3:45 since we just had one, but if the lawyers need a break now, I mean, we can do our break now, but I was thinking we get a little more in unless y'all.
No,
Break.
let's continue a little bit. Ms. Nelson, you also testified that you have a degree in nursing and psychology. Is that correct?
Yes,
And look, I won't belabor the point. Mr. Haston did an effective job at pointing out that you are flexible enough to be able to relocate to the Houston area, correct?
yes,
Right. Would you at least admit that it's probably going to be easier for you to find a new job than it will be for Bo if he has to go back and change companies?
I don't need a new job.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You also testified earlier about, I'd like to circle back to the text message that you sent to Bo regarding moving to Fulshire from Amarillo. Earlier you testified that the reason why you sent that text message was because you decided to turn your problems over to God, and that's why I wrote the note about the move. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I understand. You turned the problem over to God and you received an answer from God, and it was that it was Bo's decision to make. Is that correct?
I received the answer the morning he decided to stay in Bushland.
You received what answer?
That he woke me up and said, after receiving your letter and praying about it, we are going to stay in Bushland.
So you didn't receive a word from God, you received a word from Bo. Is that correct?
Well, I think God works mysterious ways and he talks to people. So, I mean, he obviously had an influence on Bo that night to where he would wake me up in the wee hours of the morning and tell me he wanted to stay in Bushland.
So just so I'm clear, you do still believe that God is using your husband to affect your family, correct?
Define what you mean by that.
Ma'am, I'm not really sure. I mean, it's what you believe in. You're the one who is referenced in the recordings and in your writings about Bo being a man of God. So I'm not really sure what that means. What does it mean to you is essentially the question.
I'm going to object. That's a misstatement of the facts, Judge. She doesn't call him a man of God.
Sustain.
You testified earlier about Slayton and Chad and Slayton being to, visitation with his dad. Does he have a normal standard possession order? Is that?
We do
Chad?
every other weekend.
Well, so do you know, I mean, is it a standard possession order in fact, or that's just what y'all have agreed to?
That's what we've agreed to.
Is there a custody order?
Yes.
But you guys don't follow the custody order.
Well, the custody order states every other weekend because that's what his job allows since he moved to Tulsa.
Okay. So what was the plan when you guys moved to Fulshire in January of 2020 for Shad and Slayton to see each other?
Slayton flew.
So you guys did have a plan for Slayton to see his dad when y'all moved to Fulshire, correct?
Yes.
You also said that the reason why we have, and I can't remember now, forgive me, but the recording that you guys played from December of 2019 is because you sent that recording to your daughter, Alexis, correct?
Yes.
Was that the only message or recording that you sent to her?
I think I had possibly sent her others. I'm not sure.
Possibly sent her. So you're in the habit of sending damaging evidence regarding your spouse to your to your children and his stepchildren. Is that correct?
I have since she became an adult. Yes.
So when she turned 18, you started sending her damaging information about her stepfather?
She witnessed so much of it that yes, occasionally.
Do you do that with any of your other children or just with Alexis?
Just with Alexis.
You mentioned before, ma'am, that your support system is in Amarillo, right?
Yes.
But you've moved away from that support system quite a few times throughout your marriage, correct?
Yes.
mean, one time when you guys lived in Bartlesville, you lived what, 400 plus miles away?
Approximately 6 hours.
Right, approximately 6 hours. How far is the drive from Amarillo to Houston?
9+ hours.
9+ hours. So at one time in your marriage, you were willing to live 6+ hours away from your support system with your husband. Now you guys are getting divorced. It's going to be 9 hours away, and you want to go back to Amarillo, correct?
Yes.
What was the difference when you were in Bartlesville? Why was that okay, but you say living here now isn't?
Well, 6 hours versus 9 is significant. Whenever we moved to Bartlesville, Bo's parents were there, so it did allow for a little bit of a support system.
So Bo's parents are a strong support system for you?
They have been, yes.
They have been. You and Bo both decided to move to Fulshire, correct?
He made the ultimate decision.
You went along with it.
Yes.
You said that Slayton got aggressive when you moved from Stillwater to Bushland.
One time.
And then he got aggressive again after you made him move to Fulshire.
No, I said nothing about aggression whenever we moved to Fulshire.
Okay. So he didn't get aggressive after he moved to Fulshire, but he did get depressed.
Very.
Okay. So you had seen signs in him before you moved to Fulshire that he was negatively affected by relocation, correct?
Correct.
But yet you decided to move yourself and Slayton to Fulshire in January of 2020, correct?
Yes.
Even though you knew, because it had happened before, it was likely to have a negative impact on Slayton, correct?
Yes.
Why'd you do that?
I've explained this a couple of times now, but I had a lot of fear. I was having a lot of medical problems, and Bo threatened me with many things if I chose not to go with him to Fulshire. And so out of fear, I felt like that's what I had to do.
So if you get threatened enough or fearful enough, you won't act in your children's best interest, correct?
No.
There was mention earlier about your daughter Alexis's wedding. And I do mean this with all sincerity. Congratulations, by the way. It's a big event.
Thank you.
How long have you been helping her plan that?
She's doing a lot of the planning herself.
Sure. Yeah. Do you know, let me ask you this. When was the first time you and her had a conversation to plan or to talk about her planning this wedding?
After she got engaged.
When was that?
I don't know the exact date, but I believe it was last September.
Last September. Now, you and Bo filed for divorce the month before that in August, correct?
Correct.
So since last September, have you encouraged your daughter to invite Bo to this wedding?
We honestly haven't had the conversation because she hasn't sent out any invites yet.
You and your daughter haven't talked about inviting her stepdad that you're divorcing to her wedding?
She is just now in the step where she's starting to obtain addresses.
Okay. Y'all didn't have his address?
I never said that. Of course I know his address.
Earlier, there was a discussion about Aniston and her absences and when she leaves school.
Mhm.
We've actually made two two different agreements in this case, right? We made an original agreement before mediation. Do you remember that agreement?
Yes,
And that agreement gave Bo possession and access for, I believe, a two or 3 week period until we could go to mediation, correct?
yes,
After mediation didn't work, we then had a couple of different settings for hearings, right? And on November 30th, we signed an agreement that you signed, right? Related to the exchanges and the pickups and the times for the children, correct?
yes,
So you had done exchanges with Bo before you made that agreement on November 30th, correct?
yes, 2.
Right. And you decided on November 30th to agree to possession and pickup and exchange times, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever reach out to Bo about officially changing that agreement?
What do you mean officially?
I mean, changing the agreement, changing the start times, the stop times, the exchange times, the locations, whatever it was that you thought would better accommodate Aniston. Did you ever reach out to Bo about officially changing that agreement?
Yes, I did.
What did you tell him that you wanted that agreement changed to?
I told him that Aniston's absences were adding up, and it would be in her best interest to get to stay at school until 10 a.m., which put us down the road 1 hour later. And if he still wanted his possession to start at 6 o'clock, he could drive north 1 hour to meet us.
You testified earlier that Aniston is thriving at this new school that your mother works at, correct?
Yes,
So when you said just now that it was in her best interest to stay an hour later, I'm just a little confused because it sounds like she's thriving, according to your testimony, leaving when she needs to go see her dad at 9 a.m. on Fridays. Is that correct?
I cannot answer that with a yes or a no without an explanation.
I'll play along. An explanation of what?
It's always in a child's best interest to be at school the most amount of days possible. And so when we have to travel and she doesn't get to be at school on those Fridays that she refers to as fun Fridays, it has a pretty devastating effect on her emotionally, and the fact that she's not at school on those days. So
Earlier when you testified.
Objection, Judge. Can she finish the answer?
Just
She was
saying.
still speaking.
Ma'am, you may continue.
So whenever I asked him to do what was in her best interest to get to stay until at least 10 o'clock, it was because it was truly in her best interest to be there. She's had 8 absences now. There is a state law that requires kids to be at school at least 90% of the time. So it's vitally important for her to be at school.
But earlier you testified that she was thriving at school, right?
Yes, and she is thriving in school.
Earlier you testified that Bo had come up to any of her school functions in Amarillo, correct?
I think I was asked if he attended driving her the first day of school and parent-teacher conferences.
Okay, well, let me ask you, has he attended any school activities in Amarillo since you enrolled her?
Are we talking about when she was in kindergarten, or are we talking about currently?
Has he attended any activities in Amarillo schools since you enrolled her last year?
I believe that he's had some communication with her teacher.
So he hasn't attended any school activities that you know of?
They aren't allowing that, sir.
Okay, so he can't attend any school activities. He has reached out to her teacher, correct?
I believe so.
You say you believe so. How do you know that?
Because there's been communication from the school counselor and the teacher.
You've had communication from the school counselor and the teacher regarding Bo?
Yes, the school counselor sent Bo and I both the same letter.
Okay, but again, you just said that you knew that you believe Bo has contacted the teacher at the school. I'm trying to figure out how you know that.
Because Aniston told me that her daddy said that he was going to be calling the teacher.
You don't know if he actually called her then.
I do not know that.
Okay. Your Honor, would it be possible for us to take that break?
We'll take a 10-minute break. We'll resume at 3:50. We're going off the record.
Judge, may I ask you a question real quick?
You may, not on
Just
the record yet.
good. I just want to, I have this tendency to lean into my mic when I say an objection. Is that blowing out anybody's speakers when I do that?
No, and I do the same thing when I rule. Y'all will see me lean forward. It's because I've found that a lot of times there's a little bit of a delay in picking up the mic. And so, a lot of times as a judge, we may anticipate an objection and we hear the objection. So we're saying sustain right after the objection. And are y'all able to hear mine? I kind of wonder that too, because sometimes my yellow box doesn't light up. And so I'm not sure if y'all are hearing my objections my rulings or not.
Generally, I'm hearing you. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I got this new microphone and it's kind of the first time I've used it this hearing. And I was afraid maybe when I lean in, it was just going to blow somebody's speakers out.
No, it's working just fine. And Mr. Adams, are you able to hear my rulings as well?
Your Honor, I see you rule. I hear about half of them.
Okay. Well, I guess that's not good. Maybe I need to invest in getting a new mic myself, because the way our computers are set up here at the courthouse, our mic is in the actual webcam, and I just don't think those are as good as having a microphone, standalone mic. So I had a feeling that might be happening because I've seen just over the course of the last year, sometimes people are just staring at me after I rule on an objection. And so I'll say it again. So that kind of answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
I would.
All right.
The one I have is, it's called a Blue Yeti. It's a really good mic, gets really high marks. So if you want to look up Blue Yeti, you might want to take a look at that one.
All right, I will. My court reporter found one that's called an Owl. Those are really neat, but they're super expensive, and it's it's like a 360 webcam along with the microphone, but it's not something that normally on a judge's budget I'm going to be buying. It's like I think they were like $1,200 or something. Okay, let's say that we don't finish today. What are y'all's calendars? I really like to go through once I start, but I haven't even looked at tomorrow yet. My thought is worst case scenarios, I can get y'all in for a couple hours Friday. We're not going to go more than a couple more hours after today. We'll have a little bit of rebuttal. I'm thinking we'll probably get, Mr. Hassan, how many more witnesses, or actually we're not even, how many more witnesses do you anticipate calling?
I'm going to have to call Mr. Nelson back briefly to ask him about financial accounts, because it was either that or go dig up the records and put them into evidence. And I thought I could get it done more quickly. I think we can probably do that in like less than 10 minutes. And then I'm going to call myself. And since my affidavit on my, my credentials and background, everything's already in evidence, I really just need to talk about why I need the amount of money that I'm asking you to award an interim attorney's fees. So those should both be pretty short, and it depends on how much more Mr. Adams does. So far, I'm anticipating a very short redirect, and I don't know how long Ms. Kern's going to have. I think we could get it done by today, but I am open tomorrow. Thursday, I'm in a full-day mediation, and Friday, I'm going to get my first COVID shot Friday morning. So that is like pretty high on my to-do list.
Sure, it would be on mine too. Mr. Adams, what do you look like tomorrow? I haven't even looked at my calendar yet. I'm not sure I can accommodate y'all tomorrow, but what do you look like? Because I'm assuming, Mr. Adams, you may want to put on a little rebuttal after Mrs. Nelson's testimony. I'm not saying you need to. I'm just saying I anticipate that may be something that you or your client want to do. So how much are you available tomorrow, Mr. Adams?
Your Honor,
Ms. Kern, you're coming up next, so don't feel neglected. I'm coming to you next.
Your
I don't
Honor,
feel neglected.
if you need me tomorrow, I can make myself available.
Ms. Kern, what about you?
Judge, I can be available tomorrow. I actually, I had a mediation scheduled and I just got an email within the last hour asking if we could reschedule it. So I have a state bar telephone conference first thing in the morning, but after 10 a.m. I'm available tomorrow if needed.
Okay, give me 1 second to look at my calendar. And then we'll get back going. All right, one last question, then I'll tell you what we're doing. Lawyers, do you have a preference, morning or afternoon tomorrow, beginning with Mr. Hassan and Mr. Adams and Ms. Kern?
Morning would be better for me. I have a committee call at 3:00.
Mr. Adams?
I mean, afternoon's better for me, but I can be flexible.
Ms. Kern?
My preference would be morning, Judge. I apologize, Mr. Adams. My preference would be morning if the court can accommodate us, but I can be flexible throughout the day if needed.
All right. Let's see where we end up, and then I'll let y'all know what we're doing. So let's get back on the record. We're back on the record. We're going to pick up where we left off. We are on the cross-examination, Ms. Nelson, by Mr. Adams. You may continue, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Nelson, have you instructed Aniston to retrieve items from the marital home in Fulshire?
I asked Bo.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Sustained.
Ms. Nelson, did you ask Aniston to retrieve items for you from the marital home in Fulshire?
No,
Did you ask Bo to give you marital items from the home in Fulshire?
yes,
And did he give you those items?
some of them.
How did you get those items?
I got them whenever I drove to Fulshire to exchange the kids.
So you drove all the way to Fulshire and picked up the items from the marital home?
At exchanges, yes.
Okay. Did Bo send you a text on October 4th where he asked you about Aniston getting stuff out of the master bedroom closet, some of your clothes?
I don't know the exact date, but potentially.
He did text you about that. So Aniston was getting items for you from the home in Fulshire, correct?
I think I asked her to get a couple of shirts, if I remember what you're talking about now. I thought you were referring to getting her things.
Have you asked her to get her things from the marital home in Fulshire?
That's what I asked Bo about.
That's what you asked Bo about. But you did ask Aniston to get items for you from the home in Fulshire, correct?
When we were FaceTiming, I did, yes.
What items were those?
Some of my clothes.
Some of your clothes. Did she bring those items to you?
I think on that particular instance, yes.
Do you think it's appropriate to have Aniston act as a go-between with property items between you and your husband?
I wasn't being a go-between. I asked Aniston directly.
Have you told your family not to communicate with Bo?
No,
So any communications that they've sent Bo have been just all on their own, right?
yes.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Mrs. Nelson, you have spoken with your children about the divorce, correct?
Which children?
Let me rephrase. Which children have you spoken to about the divorce?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
I have spoken in detail to my older two children at an appropriate level where I stand with the divorce. And at the first exchange on October the 2nd, I spoke to the children and told them that mommy and daddy are no longer living together and that mommy and daddy are going through a divorce process. I told them that mommy and daddy did not love them any less, that we both loved them. We both wanted them to be happy and healthy, and we would continue to support that.
Didn't you indicate that they were better off without as much contact with Bo because of the conflict that was created in y'all's marriage?
No, I did not.
You sure about that?
Yes.
Do you think having that conversation with your kids is appropriate in the middle of a divorce, Mrs. Nelson?
Which comment?
The conversation that you had with Aniston and Bristol.
I think it was 100% appropriate. Bo wanted to have the same conversation with him.
So you're okay with Bo having conversations with them about the divorce as well, correct?
He asked if I wanted to do it together, and I made the decision that I thought it would be better separate. And so, I mean, yeah, I think it's important to be honest with your children.
So Bo asked you about having a joint conversation or a coordinated conversation with them, and you unilaterally decided to have that conversation alone, correct?
Objection. She just answered that question.
Overruled. I think he's trying to clarify, make sure that was her testimony.
Yes.
Have you changed your phone since the divorce, Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Do you have your husband's phone number saved in your phone?
The kids know exactly what his phone number is, and they're the ones that dial it.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Sustained.
This is-
Sustained.
Thank you. Mrs. Nelson, do you have your husband's phone number saved in your phone?
I do not have him in my contact list, but he's in my recents and they know to click on that.
Is there a reason why you deleted his contact information out of your phone?
To be perfectly honest, I didn't really want to see his name at the time.
You think that's how he felt when he took down your picture in Fulshire?
I don't know how he
Objection.
felt.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Since we're talking about the phone, normally well, first of all, the agreement that you guys have in place right now, I think you testified earlier, says that Bo gets daily telephone communication between 7 and 9 p.m. Is that right?
Yes.
And I don't remember, so please tell me if you know. How is that call supposed to be initiated?
By the person who has possession.
Okay. So normally if you're the person that's in possession and it's time to call Bo, who physically takes the phone and calls Bo?
Sometimes the kids do, sometimes I do.
Sometimes the kids do, sometimes you do. Okay. Now I heard you testify earlier that you guys do the majority of the calls. Is that correct?
What do you mean by you guys?
I'm sorry, I meant you, Aniston, and Bristol.
Bryston, yes.
Y'all make the majority of the calls.
Yes.
So on an average week, how many days do you not make the call?
We do not make the call on the day of exchange on Friday because I have had possession, and we do not make the call on Sunday after Bo's possession because he has had possession.
So every other day of the week, you guys have always spoken.
Since the orders were put in place, yes.
When you guys have that call, where do the kids talk to their dad at?
It depends.
What does it depend on?
Where they're running to at the current moment. They're 5 and 7. They run around a whole lot.
Right. So you don't have a designated place where they have the call?
No, not usually. I mean, it usually starts off in one of the bedrooms. Yesterday, for instance, they were running laps around the house. So it just depends.
You feel like it makes for a good phone call with their dad if they're running around distracted?
I think they're kids. Getting the kids to sit down is very difficult. So
Do you record these calls?
there have been some that I have, but no, not always, no.
Not always. What prompted you to record the calls?
When he began calling the kids liars.
But you didn't record that,
I didn't record what?
him calling them a liar.
Yes, I do have it on recording.
Have you put that in as an exhibit today?
No, I think that Craig was going through the exhibits pretty quickly. I'm not sure if that one was one that was skipped or not.
There was I believe there's a picture that was in your home Fulshire of Bo and Aniston from a cruise that you took. Do you know what picture I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Where's that picture at right now?
It's in her bedroom.
It's in her bedroom.
Mhm.
Where did that picture come from?
From the house.
From the house. When did she bring that picture to where she's at now in Amarillo?
I can't answer that. I'm not sure.
Not sure. You never had a conversation with her when she tried to bring that picture to Amarillo about how she couldn't put it up?
No, it's up in her bedroom currently, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
And after no.
Ms. Nelson, didn't you have a conversation with her about how she couldn't put up that picture?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you have a conversation with her about the picture?
Whenever she brought it out of her suitcase, she said, I want to put this picture up. Where can I put it? I said, go find a place on the shelf in your bedroom to put it. And that's where it's remained.
So she didn't take it back and forth between your house and Fulshire house in her bag for a few weeks?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. It's been a lot of testimony today, Mrs. Nelson, about Bo and his level of abuse. You wrote a letter to him when you guys were dating, and I would tell you when you wrote it, but I don't believe it's dated. Do you recall writing a handwritten letter to him before y'all got married? It was produced in discovery of this case?
I've written him a lot of letters.
Okay. This letter says, the attention you have shown my children, especially Alexis, has meant the world to me.
Could you tell me which exhibit we're looking at?
We're
Or
actually
talking about?
not, Craig. It's a document that we produced in production. It's our first and second documents in document production.
Oh, then I'm gonna object to him asking her questions based on a document that's not in evidence.
Sustain.
Ms. Nelson, you wrote a letter to Bo when you guys were dating that stated that he had been a positive influence in Alexis's and Slayton's life, correct?
I cannot answer that. That was from 10 years ago.
Okay. Your Honor, I would like to refresh the witness's recollection. It's just going to take me a minute to pull up this document from discovery.
Okay.
Your Honor, while we're doing that, I'm gonna move on to some other things so we don't lose time. Hopefully come back to it. We also heard a lot, Mrs. Nelson, about physical abuse. There was a time that, well, let me say this. It's correct that you physically assaulted Bo before, right?
I need to further explain that to answer yes or no.
Ms. Nelson, I'm willing to give you a follow-up question so you can explain, but I would like you to answer my question. Have you physically assaulted Bo?
I scratched his neck, yes.
Was that the same night that he called the police and you were removed from the home?
Yes.
Why did he call the police on you that night?
Objection calls for speculation.
Same.
Did Bo tell you why he called the police?
No.
Was that the only time that the police were called out to the home for you?
Yes.
Were you arrested that night?
No.
What was the result?
The police asked if I would willingly leave the house, and I said yes.
Why do you think the police asked you to leave?
Objection, speculation.
Same.
We've heard a lot of testimony about how Bo might have some issues with his anger, according to you. Do you remember writing an email in October of 2018 regarding? Do you remember writing an email in 2018 regarding a coaching incident when Bo was coaching sports? There was an altercation with a man in the crowd. You remember an email like that?
Yes, but that's not exactly accurate.
What is accurate?
He got in the altercation with the coach from the opposite team.
And you wrote an email, and in that email, you defended Bo's actions, correct?
Yes, because he asked me to.
Excuse me?
Yes, because he wanted me to defend him.
So what you're saying is that you wrote this email to defend your husband's actions that day, but that what you wrote is not true because, and you did that because Bo influenced you to do it, correct?
I would have to follow up with that, sir,
You would have to follow up with that.
after I answer yes or no.
Let me look back at my documents.
While you're doing that, Ms. Nelson, Mr. Hassan's going to be making notes, and if he thinks you need to explain an answer, he's going to have an opportunity to ask you to elaborate on something. Right now,
Okay.
Mr. Adams' questions and just answer the question that's asked.
Okay.
Your Honor, what I would like to do is I'd like permission to share my screen to show the witness a document that we produced in discovery that I believe was authored by her for impeachment purposes, potentially. First, I'd like to see if she knows what it is, and then if it refreshes her memory, perhaps we don't have to impeach her.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mrs. Nelson, do you recognize this document?
I recognize my handwriting. I would have to read the document, sir.
So this is your handwriting.
Yes.
This is the first page, and I will admit we produced it backwards. And then this is the second page. Mrs. Nelson, do you remember writing that letter?
Yes,
In that letter, right, you state that Bo was a really great influence on your daughter Alexis and on Slate, correct?
yes,
Later in that letter, you isolate, and this is before you guys were married, that Bo was doing things that indicated that he was unfaithful, correct?
yes,
And then at the end of the letter, you basically indicate that you guys are breaking up because he's moving, correct?
yes.
Mrs. Nelson, isn't it at least fair to say that from the very beginning, before you ever married Bo, you knew a lot of his shortcomings, including his proclivity to want to be with other women, correct?
Yes,
And you decided to marry him anyway, correct?
yes,
You decided to stay with him 10 years, correct?
yes,
You decided, or you at least allowed him to move you and your children down here to Fulshire, correct?
yes,
But now you've decided you don't want to live here anymore, correct?
yes.
When you filed for divorce in Randall County, let me rephrase. On your timeline, it says that you and Bo separated on May 3rd, correct?
You'd have to show me that, but yes, approximately.
Well, it's important, so let me show you that.
Teresa, you have your exhibits. You can look at it.
What's the number?
It's probably like number 2, something like that. Yeah, R2.
So on May 3rd, you and Bo officially separated. Slayton and Alexis moved back to Amarillo, correct?
Yes,
But you didn't move out of the house that day in Fulshire, correct?
I did not leave that day.
Did you have a conversation with your husband where you informed him that you were separating?
There have been lots of conversations.
There had been lots of conversations. So when did you guys separate?
I mean, whenever I stated that I was going to Amarillo for a while, as we have shown through exhibits, we had decided to separate and take time for both of us to find healing. I did come back several times to try to talk to him. I brought the kids back for his birthday. Those talks did not progress us the way I hoped and prayed that they would. So I would return back to Amarillo. We would have more discussions. And ultimately, after him running with the children and after the Florida trip, I realized that it was likely not going to work.
It was likely not going to work. Is it fair to say then that your husband was pretty blindsided when you filed for divorce in Randall County?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
And I'd also ask, just also going to ask the judge if we could ask Mr. Adams to quit repeating everything that my client says. It's bolstering the answers that he wants the court to hear, and it's also a sidebar.
It's sustained as a sidebar. I know, try to refrain from doing that, Mr. Adams. I know that some lawyers, it's just they get into habits, but it is technically a sidebar. So if you can try not to repeat the witness's answers.
Please forgive me, Your Honor. I will work on that. You produced a handwritten timeline in discovery of this case, correct, Mrs. Nelson?
Yes,
And if I remember correctly, I think it's a 2020 timeline.
yes.
You have a May 1st, 2020 entry. You remember what your May 1st, 2020 entry said?
I do not.
Your Honor, I'm just pulling that document up.
And just so I can follow along, Mr. Adams, that's not R2 you're referencing. What is the exhibit? Because
It's
Doesn't-
not, Your Honor. It's a document produced by them in discovery.
okay.
Mrs. Nelson, isn't it true that, well, exactly what you just said, that you and your husband were trying to work on your marriage throughout the summer of 2020, correct?
What I hoped for, yes.
Right. And that you then decided after July 28th, things weren't going to work out and that you wanted a divorce, correct?
Yes,
So when you filed for divorce in Randall County and claimed that you guys were separated and you had established residence back in May of 2020 in Randall County, that wasn't true, was it?
it was.
Why did the judge dismiss your suit if that was true?
Objection, Judge. I didn't really know where to start with that one.
Sustained.
Hearsay.
I'm looking at petitioners P22. Mrs. Nelson, I'd like to show you a section of this message that's already been admitted into evidence. I'm going to go down to, this is page 4, Your Honor. Mrs. Nelson, is this your response here in black and white?
Yes, I believe so.
Can you read that response for us, Mrs. Nelson?
You have had the kids every other weekend since we decided to take a little time for both of us to work on ourselves. You suggested a 2 to 3 month separation, and we agreed not to spend money on you a 1-bedroom apartment. I have come back a couple of times throughout the summer. I never tried to enroll the kids in Amarillo. You asked to bring all options to the table, and you shut down after the first one. We have agreed on enrolling Aniston virtually for you to take it off the table once I agreed. He doesn't have a girlfriend in Amarillo. They broke up almost a month ago.
When was that text message sent, Mrs. Nelson? Do you recall?
You'd have to show me the date. No, I don't.
I'm sorry, I don't know that one is timestamped. I think the beginning is, though. Does that seem accurate to you around that time?
Yes, it was after he ran with the kids.
Right. But after July 28th, after you claim that you decided that it wasn't going to work out, you sent him this message where you said that you haven't tried to enroll the kids in Amarillo. My question to you just is, don't you think he wouldn't have expected you to then turn around 3 days later and file for divorce in Randall County?
Objection, speculation.
Sustain.
Pass the witness.
Ms. Kern?
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Nelson, what is your style of discipline of the children if they do something wrong?
Overall, I normally use taking away of devices or TV or a toy that's important to them. Occasionally, I will spank their bottom, but overall, I try to do the method of taking something away to discipline them.
Does your methodology generally work with the children?
Most of the time, I would say yes.
What kind of occasion would drive you to physically discipline the children by spanking them?
Normally, if I've tried all other options, if I've talked to them and they continue the behavior, if I've taken the item away and they continue with the behavior, if I'm not seeing that there's any way that one of the two of them are not listening, it's my last resort.
How would you describe Mr. Nelson's discipline style of the children?
Very authoritarian, his way or the highway. He is quick to anger. And so if he gets angry, he immediately lashes out, usually in the form of spanking, thumping, slapping, backhanding.
When you say thumping, would you mind describing for the court exactly what you mean by that?
On several occasions, he's just taken his finger and just thumped the kids on top of the head.
What types of physical violence have you experienced by Mr. Nelson?
Personally, by far the worst was whenever I was 4 months pregnant with our firstborn. He came home incredibly intoxicated.
Sorry, I'm going to stop you 1 second.
Okay.
If you would describe what types of violence he has used against you.
Okay, he has suffocated me. He has spit in my face. He has yanked me by my ponytail so aggressively that he injured my neck. He has ripped the door handle off of my car. He has taken dining room furniture and thrown it across the house. He has damaged my bedroom furniture by throwing it against each other. He has held me against my will. He has thrown me down. He has shoved me down hallways. At a restaurant, he slapped me across the back of the head. He has he's chased me in a vehicle. He has thrown me into a car to prevent me from leaving. He has grabbed me by my wrists so that I couldn't leave. Those are the big ones. He of course lashed out at me when I had a boiling pot of water in my hand.
Of those incidents that you've described, how many of them were the children present for?
The vast majority of them.
Have the children seen him try to suffocate you?
I was pregnant with our firstborn, so no.
Have the children seen him spit in your face?
Aniston was there, yes.
Have the children seen him yank you by the ponytail?
That was before Aniston and Bryston were born.
What about throwing furniture?
Yes, he stated how he threw pans and that was all in front of Aniston.
What about grabbing you by the wrists or shoving you?
That was usually in our bedroom or our closet, so it was not in front of the children.
When the children have witnessed these physical violent outbursts, what have they done? How have the children responded without saying anything that they've said?
Traumatized.
Describe what you mean by traumatized.
They become very emotional. They scream, they cry, they run away, they come back, they say, "Daddy, stop," those sort of things.
When the children have reacted in these traumatic ways, what has Dad's response been?
Vocally, he will normally continue until his rage fit is over. And then he is always quick to apologize. "I'm sorry, get over it," kind of thing. Rarely has he gathered us up as a family and said, "I won't do this again," or anything like that. It's just an apology, move on.
During the children's FaceTime, we talked a little bit about the FaceTime conversations and whether or not you've recorded them. To your knowledge, has Mr. Nelson recorded them?
I don't know.
Do you know if Mr. Nelson has taken any pictures during FaceTime?
Yes.
You've witnessed Mr. Nelson taking pictures?
Yes.
Okay. And what is Mr. Nelson taking pictures of?
There's been occasions where if Aniston has started crying during the conversation, he will snap pictures. If the kids are running around and I happen to enter into the screen, he will take my picture. On the audio recording, you can hear Bryson saying, "Look, it's mommy, look, it's mommy." And he turns the phone towards me. Bo will take a picture of that.
Without saying what Aniston would say, I apologize, strike that. How often would you say Aniston cries during a FaceTime exchange?
I would say it's probably happened at least a handful of times.
And without saying anything that she has said, what sort of scenario would cause Aniston to cry during a FaceTime with Daddy?
Daddy will give her puppy dog eyes, a pouty face. He will act like he's crying and upset, and it plays on her emotions, and she's extremely emotional and cries very easily, and it hurts her heart whenever she sees this.
Have you spoken with Bo about those behaviors and how it upsets Aniston?
Yes, I have.
On how many occasions?
At least 2.
And what was the general context of those conversations?
I just explained to Bo that it hurts her whenever he makes those faces at her, whenever he, gives the puppy dog eyes and different things like that. He listened. I don't know how favorable he was because it has continued after a little bit, but I can say that it has been better since I addressed it.
So Bo was able to address that upset of Aniston and somewhat correct that behavior.
Yes.
Correct. With regard to Aniston's absences from school, what if you know, what would happen if you were to be called to truancy court or be held responsible by the school district for her absences?
I don't
If
100%.
you know.
I don't 100% know. I think that they can threaten it to the point of jail time, to my knowledge, but I'm not 100% sure.
The letter from the school, from Crestview Elementary, that you received was that we have entered into evidence was dated, I believe, February 5th.
Yes.
Have you received any subsequent letters from the school or any subsequent communications regarding the truancy?
No.
What types of things is Aniston missing at school by not being there on Friday mornings?
She calls it Fun Friday. And so she says that it's the day that they get to do a lot of fun things. They get to be on their Chromebooks a little bit more. They get to do some fun things in PE that they choose. They get to have an extra recess, things like that.
I'm having a hard time hearing the witness's testimony. There seems to be some background noise.
Yeah, I am too. I guess we're gonna have to work through that because it sounds like it's coming from Ms. Kern's office.
Uh-oh.
But I don't know if there's any way.
It sounds like somebody's printing something.
I'm
Right.
typing, but I'm trying to be very quiet about it. If my typing is disruptive, I will absolutely cease that.
No, it doesn't sound like typing.
Printing.
It's a copier machine or a printer or something.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'll try to see what I can do to eliminate feedback if I can. All right. So if Aniston were able to attend that extra hour of school on Friday mornings, which of those activities would she be able to participate in?
Probably the classroom ones. I'm not exactly certain what time she goes to PE, but I'm pretty sure it's after lunch, and lunch is at 10:45.
So if she were able to go to school for that time on Friday mornings, she would benefit from classroom activities. We're not sending her to school for an extra hour on Friday morning so that she can have additional recess, correct?
No, that's in the afternoon.
Do you believe that that difference of an hour? Well, let me ask you this: if that difference of an hour on Friday mornings were to cut into Dad's time, is it something where you would be willing to give him additional time, maybe on Sunday, in order to make up for it so that Dad doesn't miss time?
I would like to say yes, but we don't get home until almost 10:30 or 11 anyways on Sundays with the current setup. So it would make it quite difficult.
Let's talk about that. What do the kids on Fridays when you drive the kids to visit Dad? What kinds of things do the kids do in the car?
We often play Disney songs and sing. They play, they have Amazon Kids Unlimited on their iPads, so they play kid-safe games. Sometimes we rent movies, some new movies that come out, and watch the movies. And then we just talk. So, and both of them usually take a nap.
I don't blame them. All right. And then on Sundays on the way home, what kinds of things do the kids do in the car?
Basically the same thing. We usually grab dinner and have it in the car. After picking them up, sorry, something flashed across the screen. We kind of do the same thing. We listen to Disney songs and sing. We watch movies, and they play games on their iPads. And I usually turn off all electronics around 9 or 9:30 so that they can wind down and go to sleep.
Okay. Do you pack their pajamas in the car?
Yes.
Okay. On Fridays when you are bringing the kids to Dad, is there any point during the drive here meaning Fort Bend County, Is there any point where their demeanor starts to change or where their attitude changes in any way?
They recognize as we enter Fulshire and as we enter the neighborhood. And so it's at that time that they start to cry a little bit and start becoming a little bit emotional, telling me that they don't want to leave me, that they're sad, when am I going to see you again? And, those kind of things.
Ms. Nelson, would you think it fair to say that when the children are with daddy, they miss you, and when they're with you, they miss their daddy?
Yes.
In your opinion, how do you think the children are doing in terms of coping with those things?
I think they're doing pretty well, honestly. I had them in counseling for 5 sessions, and the counselor thought that they were doing good at that time. That was, several months ago. Aniston spoke to the school counselor not long ago, and the school counselor did not see a reason to continue seeing Aniston because she thought that there wasn't any issues with sadness or depression or anything along those lines.
Does Aniston feel comfortable, does Aniston feel comfortable going to the school counselor if she's having a bad day?
I think she does now. I think she probably didn't know before she met the counselor, but she came home that day and she said, "Mommy, I talked to a really nice lady and she said I could come talk to her anytime." And so I said, that's great. And if you ever have a reason to, just talk to Mrs. Barker about it. So.
Do you think that it is important for the kids to spend time with dad despite the things that have gone on between the two of you?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I think it's very important for the kids to have a relationship with both their mom and their dad.
Do you believe that the back and forth, strike that. Do you believe that the children experiencing the volatility between you and dad in your relationship is harmful to them?
Yes.
Has that volatility lessened since you and Mr. Nelson began living in separate cities?
Yes.
If the court were to order that you return to Fort Bend County, do you have any concerns with regard to that co-parenting relationship?
I do have many concerns. Something that Bo said to me was that if I had to return, that no matter where I chose to live, he would move in next door. That caused a lot of fear in me, that he would want to continue to control me post divorce. I think that he would try to come to my house, enter my house, and spend time with the children outside of what the standard orders suggested. So I have a lot of fear surrounding that. I think most of it is just based on him continuing to manipulate and control me after the divorce.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Hassan?
Try to get this done before the end of the day, Your Honor. Teresa, when we were talking about Bo being drunk, or when you were talking to Mr. Adams about Bo being drunk, were you talking about 10 times where he had been to the point of where he was throwing up drunk?
Yes.
Has he been drunk other times besides just those 10 times?
Yes.
Approximately how often, say in the last 3 years?
I would say likely multiple times a month.
Well, when you say likely multiple times a month, can you be more clear than that?
I would say 2 to 3 times a month he was had drank more than he should have and was showing signs of intoxication.
I wanted to ask you, have you looked at the flights between Houston and Amarillo?
Yes.
Oh, are there several direct flights a day?
There's at least one.
Uh, is there any reason that you know of that Mr. Nelson couldn't fly up to Amarillo and avoid his children spending so much time and have some of his visitations up there?
No.
I'm really interested to know about the email that you looked at from before you got married, or was it a handwritten? I think it was a handwritten note. Um, when Mr. Adams was asking you that question, what did you feel like you were being asked really?
That I was accepting the abuse and the lying and the cheating.
And that, you know, you should just stay married to your abuser just because you allowed it before you got married?
Correct.
Is that has that been, well, why did you marry the guy after he had cheated on you before you got married?
Because he made promises to change. He talked about how much he loved me and the children and how he wanted to be a good stepfather and a good husband to me. He made a ton of promises
And
after that letter was written.
your background is nursing, right?
Yes.
Before you took this job and back when you used to work, what area of nursing did you work in?
Newborn nursery.
Would you say that you are a nurturer?
Very much so.
What do you think about your man picker?
I think it stinks.
And do you think that should be held against you and through cross-examination because you've had, would you call yourself a fixer?
A fixer, an empath, somebody who's very trusting.
Those are great things for a mother to be, right?
Correct.
But not always the best things for picking a spouse.
Correct.
We kind of got off onto this, your daughter missing, Aniston missing Fun Fridays. I mean, it would be great if she could spend a little more time at school, but really you're trying to follow the mandated state law about children's required attendance at school, correct?
That is correct.
And if she keeps having absences, somebody's going to end up in truancy court, correct?
Correct.
So that's the only reason that you really need her to stay until 10, so she won't be counted absent that day.
Correct.
Do you have some solutions for possession and access other than what we've already talked about that would lessen the amount of time the children have to travel and also enhance the amount of time that Mr. Nelson has with his children?
Yes.
Tell us about those.
I think that it would be great if he did choose his weekend with a greater than 100 miles. That way he could have increased access to the kids on those weekends. I think that it would be great if he would travel up here for one of his possessions if we went with a standard possession order. That way the kids would not have to travel. Aniston could attend school all day on those Fridays. And I think that it would be in her best interest to get to stay at school until 10 o'clock on the Fridays that I have to travel. I think that it might be easier and more accommodating for them to spend more time with Bo if he would meet me on Fridays. Aniston could go to school. Both of us could work for a little while. We could meet and still exchange at 6 o'clock. So I have a lot of options to make it work.
Also, you know, under the over 100-mile standard possession order, the parent that has the visitation schedule could have 42 days during that summer period, correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that this summer each party should only maybe have a couple of weeks of extended summer possession?
Yes.
And does that have anything to do with the fact that we're about to launch off into a custody evaluation?
No.
Well, wouldn't it be unfair to a parent if after spending 42 days with them, they then went in and interviewed with the doctor?
Oh, I see what you're asking. Yes, yes. Sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're asking for a shortened period of summertime, it really has to do with the fact that you want the doctor to be able to have, good information and not a chance to have spent an enormous amount of time with one parent or the other prior to his interviews with the children.
Correct.
Pass witness.
Mr. Adams?
Mrs. Nelson, isn't it true that all of the options that you just talked about to lessen the travel time on the kids don't cut down travel time as much as you coming back to Fort Bend County?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure if travel time would be lessened on the kids if you and Mr. Nelson both lived in Fort Bend County?
I think to an extent, yes.
I'm done, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Attorney, anything further from this witness?
Nothing further.
Nothing further, Judge.
Nothing further from me, Randy.
Mr. Haston, you said you have another witness that you'd like to call. I think we'll do that tomorrow. Do the lawyers anticipate that there's any way we wouldn't finish this if we start tomorrow at 10, that we wouldn't finish this by noon?
From my perspective, no, I'd have to defer to Mr. Adams, Judge.
Well, I think both sides have given me their case with the exception of attorney's fees by Mr. Haston. So what I would probably do is give you, Mr. Haston, about 15 minutes to do that or so. And then I'll put everybody on a clock tomorrow so that we finish tomorrow. Because that's my intent, is that we finish before lunch. But I feel like both sides got approximately a day to present their case, which is what y'all had anticipated the case taking. And I know we give these time estimates and we try our best to stay close to them. But I think at this point, I've heard enough on the case that I have a pretty good feel for what's going on. And I think if each side has approximately an hour to present the remainder of their case, if any, that should be sufficient time to finish. So let's start back up tomorrow at 10 a.m. I did put a chat in the box. I'm sorry to if that threw Ms. Nelson off because it pops up to everybody, but I don't have petitioners 37, or at least I didn't unless it was sent today.
I will take care of that now.
Were you able to send? Okay, if you can just email that to her, because I think that may be a lengthy exhibit, and so I would like to be able to review that tonight, because I typically rule from the bench. I don't know. I didn't get to review exhibits last night because it was my son's birthday and I had a soccer game with my daughter, so I was busy last night. But I may be able to review exhibits tonight, which would allow me to rule from the bench tomorrow. So I would like to do that. And so if you can send me P37, that would be great, Mr. Adams. All right, we're going to stand in recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate your time.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Judge.